After speaking with Chris, Ericka, and the Hartzogs, one thing is clear. We're living through a pivotal moment in time. Some might even call it a revolution. Between advances in technology, progress made in the labor movement, and shifting social and cultural norms, there's a growing appreciation and understanding of how the current system doesn't work for everyone.
And if you don't know how to navigate it all, your career can feel like a trap, which has a negative effect on your finances, your health, and your relationships. So whether you're cashing out to start a business or to live a life of leisure, as we say in our book, the decision is ultimately yours. I did want to ask you another question, though, because you mentioned something, and it's something that I'm realizing is coming up more and more often, just kind of given our audience and their recent affinity for tech jobs, right? I think the pandemic is one of the things that a lot of folks really fell in love with, and they was like, gotta get me a tech job. And so as someone that has been doing that and living that life for probably more than a decade, as we've been paying attention to compensation, and obviously that being one of the huge draws for why people want to go into tech, the question is always asked around, what do you do if you're offered like company stock? And I'm asking this because you brought it up a little bit.
I'm wondering if that was the forbidden question.
In our question. In your case, you said you did have that, but it sounds as if you understood what was at stake and you diversified. You also kind of alluded to the fact that you had, or that you know some people who didn't do that. So I wonder if you could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah.
Why you did it, why you think some people didn't do it, and what you would recommend knowing what you know now.
Yeah. Ooh, I'm so glad you asked that question, because this is a topic that we need to talk about more. And the tech companies, amazing comp, amazing stock bonuses and things like that. Again, we'd be in meetings and they would give like $200,000 worth of stock to someone in like a raffle. Like it was crazy.
Wow.
Boom times were like, there was just so much money flowing around. And that same $200,000 worth of stock is probably worth $20,000 right now because of the tech crash. Yeah. So I don't know if it was someone on my team who literally won $200,000 worth of stock in a company meeting. And I don't know, because we all believed in that company and I still believe in that company. I doubt she sold the stock when it was $600 a share and now it's, I don't know what. So my answer to that is we need more voices like JL Collins, like you guys really candidly talking about if you get these great tech jobs, especially if your income, like for me, my corporate income has always kind of just been gravy because I was already financially independent. So for me, the stock, it was almost like a social experiment. Like, oh, I got all this, $170,000 worth of stock, for your first year of employment, whatever. It's a lot of money for most people. But for me, it was always kind of play money of like, I wonder how that's going to end up. And the moral of the story is sell your stock. Like if you are counting on your stock so you get a really great base, right? But then they give you all this stock.
Yeah.
I think what most financial experts will tell you, but it's so quiet, it's not really spoken about, is sell whatever part of your stock is considered your compensation, sell it immediately as soon as it vests, because then you have that cash in hand.
Exactly.
Where it gets tricky is if you see the stock, let's say you join the company and it's at $90 a share, and then your stock vests and it's at $600 a share. I'm sharing kind of real examples here. So then you're like, well, I don't want to sell this. This is going to the moon. And then what happens when it drops down to $20 a share? Yeah. And then you don't have that, it's like this weird, and the last 2 years have been a uniquely volatile period for tech. But I think the rule of thumb that I would recommend, and I'm no financial expert, but just on what I've seen, is if you need that money and you're counting on it as compensation, cash it out when it vests. Yeah. And then anything beyond that, so let's say in your stock compensation, it says you're guaranteed $100,000 worth of stock. And when it comes to vest, it's at $180,000. I would say cash out the 100, let that 80 ride, because that was money you weren't expecting anyways. And if it goes up, it goes up. If it goes down, it goes down. But I think what most people do is they just let all of it ride because you get caught up in the rah-rah of, I believe in this company. And then sometimes you don't end up with 100 and you don't end up with the 8, you end up with 20 or something.
Exactly.
And this is really what's happening in the market right now. So I think that's why they didn't want us to have those conversations, but they're important conversations to have if you're going to be in tech. And if you're counting on that compensation, you really have to be smart and cash out anything that you think you are counting on.
Yeah, I think also, thank you for that. And I would also say, I think, especially for people of color, right, who more often than not
Are the first to go.
are the first ones to even be in a position to have this. They are, in many cases, the only ones in their family that might have amassed that kind of wealth at any point in their family's sort of legacy. And so the risk is significantly high just from a community and a generational wealth perspective. What percentage of people do you think keep it, just based on your own experience and knowing what you know? Like, what percentage of people do you think hold on because they believe that, like, they want to have that story when they're 60 and say, listen, this one thing that I did went to the moon, and now we're set for life, or us and our children's children are set? What percentage of people do you think sort of hold on based on the desire to kind of have that story at the end of it all, versus, what percentage of people do you think maybe followed your advice?
Yeah. And I don't want to take credit like it was my advice, because I definitely got caught holding the bag a bit too, because for me, it was kind of play money, the stock money. Yeah. But just talking to colleagues, only a very few I know cashed out, and it was usually because they had something specific, like they were trying to buy a house, so they cashed out their stock for down payment. I know a handful of people who did that. But I think most people, because you get caught up in the hype of how great things are going, I think and you believe in the company, you're a part of it, Seems to me like most people were letting the majority of it ride. So hopefully they weren't counting on that money for significant portions of their sustenance. And I don't think they were, because we all, you still get a really fair base pay in tech on top, separate from the stock. So I don't think it destroyed anyone, but I do think fortunes were made and lost, especially at some of these big companies that were, just huge during the COVID boom. And then a lot of these stocks just collapsed, dropped. Yeah. I mean, we've all heard the stories of people who lost millions and billions of dollars in a day. Like, I think a lot of people got caught in that.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Cashing Out the Podcast. To see more videos like this, subscribe to our YouTube channel and be sure to turn on your notifications. To get your copy of Cashing Out the book, visit Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble, your local bookstore, or download the audiobook on Audible.